The price of family honor, a father's lost years. You know that feeling when someone says something so small, so offhand, but it sticks with you like a splinter you can't pull out? It happened to me one Sunday morning. My mom, casually over coffee, said, "You really need to start thinking about your future more seriously, Ethan. You're almost 20. Time flies." At the time, I didn't think much of it. Sure, I had just finished high school, and I was working part-time at a local cafe, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. But looking back, I know that was the moment that would crack open everything I thought I knew about myself and my future. It wasn't her words, not really. It was how they settled in my mind, how they made me question everything I had been avoiding. I'd always thought I had time. I thought I could drift, take things as they came, and everything would work out. But now, suddenly, I wasn't so sure. It was in that space, where uncertainty met a quiet urgency, that I met Clara. She wasn't the kind of girl you'd notice right away. Soft-spoken, often buried in a book. She had this way of seeing the world that made you want to listen. I couldn't help but be drawn to her, to the way her eyes lit up when she spoke about something she cared about. Whether it was a novel she just finished or something as simple as the weather. I don't know when it happened, but somewhere along the way, we became more than just friends. We shared stories, long silences, dreams that felt too big for both of us. And before I knew it, I was falling for her. Then, one afternoon, everything changed. Clara sat across from me, her hands trembling as she held up a small, white stick. Pregnancy test. My heart stopped. The room felt suddenly too small, the air thick with something I couldn't quite name. "Ethan," she said, her voice steady but soft. "I'm pregnant." My mind raced. No, this couldn't be happening. I've been careful. We talked about everything, about not rushing into anything too fast. I thought we were safe. But there she was, sitting in front of me, her eyes full of fear, full of hope, holding a test that changed everything. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was real. It was about us. About a family. I could see it in her eyes, the certainty, the conviction. But my mind was screaming, my body frozen in place. I wasn't ready. I didn't know if I ever could be. Clara took a deep breath, her calmness in stark contrast to my chaos. "We can do this, Ethan. Together." But as she spoke, a weight settled on my chest, and for the first time, the future felt too close, too overwhelming. How could I handle this? How could I, at 19, be ready for something so huge? I had no idea. But one thing was clear. The path I'd been walking was no longer an option. Clara's pregnancy was no longer just a thought in my mind. It was a reality, one that I couldn't ignore. The moment I had feared came crashing down on me like a wave. I wasn't ready for this, but I knew that I couldn't face it alone. I needed help. I needed guidance. And in my panic, I turned to the one place I thought would give me some semblance of comfort. My parents. I walked into their house that afternoon, unsure of what I would find. My father, as always, sat in his chair by the window, his eyes sharp, like he was waiting for something. My mother was in the kitchen, as usual, her movements purposeful, her face always slightly too controlled. I took a deep breath before I spoke, trying to steady the hurricane inside me. "Mom, Dad, I need to talk to you." I began, my voice barely above a whisper. The words tumbled out quickly after that, faster than I could stop them. "Clara's pregnant." For a moment there was silence. My father's eyes narrowed, but he didn't say anything right away. It was like he was searching for some sign that I was joking, or maybe trying to figure out if this was some kind of misunderstanding. My mother didn't even look up from her work, but I could see the color draining from her face. "You're too young for this." My father finally spoke, his voice steady, unyielding. "You haven't even finished school yet, Ethan. What do you think you're doing?" I opened my mouth, desperate to explain, to say that I loved Clara, that this was real, that it wasn't something I could just walk away from. But my father cut me off, his tone cold and final. "What will the neighbors think? What will they say about us? And what about your future? This is not the future I imagined for you." His words were a slap to my face, But it was my mother's voice that really hit me. She stood in the doorway, her eyes full of something I couldn't quite place. Disappointment? Anger? Fear? "What about the family name, Ethan?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What will people say? You can't just throw everything away for this. Family honor." Those words hung in the air like a suffocating cloud. It wasn't just my mother speaking. It was years of family expectations, of old values passed down without question. It was the weight of a legacy that I had never asked for but was now being forced to carry. I wanted to shout, to scream that this wasn't about the name, that it was about love and the life I was trying to build with Clara. But I didn't. I stood there, frozen, as my father's gaze bore down on me. "You're going to end this, Ethan. You're going to end it now," he said, his voice low but unrelenting. "You think you're ready to be a father? You think you're ready to throw away everything we've worked for?" It was like a pressure building up inside me, and with every word it squeezed tighter and tighter. The weight of his expectations, my mother's fear, the crushing certainty that my life as I knew it would be gone was suffocating. And in that moment I made the hardest decision of my life. I walked away from Clara. I picked up the phone and called her, my hand shaking as I dialed. When she answered, her voice soft, tentative, I told her the words I never thought I'd say. "It's over, Clara. I can't do this. I'm sorry." She was silent for a moment. Then, in that silence, I could hear the pain, the hurt that I had just caused. But I couldn't take it back. I couldn't undo the choice that had already been made for me. Before I share what happened next, the moment that changed everything and left me questioning everything I thought I knew about family, I want to connect with you, my amazing viewers. Where are you watching from? Drop your country's flag in the comments below. And if you've ever felt the weight of a decision that changed your life forever, hit that like button because trust me, this story is just getting started. I couldn't escape the reality of what I had done, and yet I had made my choice. I told myself it was for my future. I told myself it was for the greater good. But deep down, every fiber of my being screamed that I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. The days blurred together, each one feeling like a hollow echo of the last. I threw myself into college, burying my guilt beneath the weight of assignments and lectures. It was easier to focus on classes, on making the grades my parents expected, than to face the raw, searing emptiness inside me. I landed a job at a tech startup, something that seemed logical, something that would make them proud. The work was demanding, and at first, it kept my mind distracted, too busy to think, too busy to feel. But the distractions only went skin deep. Beneath the surface, a constant ache lingered like a low hum in the background of my life. My routine was carefully constructed to keep me from looking back, from looking at what I had lost. Clara, Lucas. They were memories I had sealed away, not wanting to face the truth of what I had given up. It was easier this way. I told myself it was for the best. I was doing the right thing, wasn't I? But then, one night, in the middle of a crowded office with deadlines looming, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but I answered anyway. My heart skipped when I heard the voice on the other end. "Ethan?" It was Clara's voice. My chest tightened, 1,000 thoughts rushing to the surface, each one more painful than the last. I didn't know what to say, so I just listened. "Your son's name is Lucas," she said, her voice calm, yet weighted with unspoken emotion. Lucas. The name hit me like a punch to the gut, knocking the air out of me. Lucas. My son. The child I had abandoned, the child I had chosen to walk away from. My mind raced, and suddenly everything that I had pushed down for so long came rushing back. Clara. The life we could have had. The future that had slipped away because I had chosen to put everything else first. I wanted to ask how she was, how Lucas was, what their life had been like without me. But guilt clamped down on my throat, silencing me. I couldn't ask. Not when I knew I had no right to. I had no place in their world anymore. The days after that phone call were a blur of sleepless nights and endless thoughts. I tried to convince myself that I had made the right choice, that this future I was building was worth it. I had my career, my success, the approval of my parents. But none of it felt real. It was like living in someone else's life. Everything I had worked so hard for felt meaningless, empty. The price I had paid for this so-called future was far too high. I would lie in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, unable to shut off the memories of Clara, her gentle smile, the way her eyes softened when she talked about dreams of a future together. And then I'd think about Lucas. My son. The little boy who would be growing up without me. Without his father. I thought about reaching out. I thought about calling Clara, about apologizing, about trying to make amends. But the guilt, the shame, it held me back. How could I explain myself after everything? How could I face them after what I had done? It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the life I had thrown away. The life that Clara had built on her own, the life that Lucas would grow up with without me. Was it too late to fix this? Was it too late to try? I didn't know. But one thing was clear, I couldn't keep running from this. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when I knew the truth. That truth was staring me in the face, in the form of Lucas, the son I had never seen, the son I had never been there for. And as the days passed, the question burned inside me louder than anything else. Was this really the future I had wanted? Or had I sacrificed everything that truly mattered in the pursuit of a dream that wasn't mine? Years passed, and from the outside, it looked like I had built everything my parents had wanted for me. I had a steady job, a respectable career, and the kind of life that seemed perfect on paper. But deep down, I felt trapped in a world that wasn't mine. I had a new girlfriend, Sophie, a kind woman who seemed to fit perfectly into the life I had created. But our relationship, though comfortable, lacked passion. It was like trying to fill a hole with something that would never fit. I never let go of the past. The memories of Clara, of Lucas, haunted me in the quiet moments, in the spaces between thoughts. They were there, always lingering, a constant reminder of the life I could have had. And then one afternoon, everything changed. The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and when I opened the door, I almost didn't recognize the faces standing there. My parents. It had been years since we'd spoken with any real warmth. Years since we had been more than just polite strangers bound by blood and obligation. But now here they were, standing at my doorstep, holding a bouquet of flowers in their hands. Their gesture was weak, almost too late, and I could see through it immediately. They weren't here to ask about me or Sophie or even my life. No, they were here for something else. They were here for Lucas. My son. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, and for a moment I couldn't speak. How could they possibly think they had the right to show up now after everything that had happened? After years of silence, of choosing their reputation over me, over Clara, over our child, how could they think they could just waltz back into my life? The anger inside me rose, burning hot and sharp, but along with it, a strange sense of control. For the first time in years, I wasn't the scared, confused boy who had tried to please them. I wasn't the one whose life was dictated by their expectations. I was a man now, and I would take control of this situation just like I should have done all those years ago. I agreed to arrange the meeting, but on my terms, not theirs. I reached out to Clara, unsure of what to expect. Would she agree? Would she be willing to let my parents into Lucas's life after everything they had done? After some hesitation, Clara agreed. She told me Lucas, now a teenager, was open to meeting them, but he wasn't going to make it easy for them. The day of the meeting arrived, and I stood back, watching as my parents met Lucas for the first time. The tension in the air was thick, and I could see it in their faces. They were uncomfortable, unsure of how to approach him, unsure of how to fix the years of absence. Lucas, for his part, was calm but distant. He wasn't angry, not in the way I might have expected, but his face told a different story. He wasn't here to play the role they wanted him to. He wasn't here to make them feel better about their absence. "I'm not here to make you feel better," Lucas said, his voice steady but firm. "I'm here because my father wants me to be." And that was the moment when I realized just how far I had come. I wasn't the boy who had made that painful decision all those years ago. I wasn't the son bound by their expectations. I had taken control of my own life, my own choices. I had made peace with the consequences, and in this moment I felt free. My mother, unable to handle the weight of her own decisions, fainted. The moment was electric, full of tension and release. It was the ultimate justice. The years of silence, the years of forcing their ideals on me, it all came crashing down in that single moment. For the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. The chains that had held me back were gone. And as my mother collapsed in my arms, the look on her face said everything. She had finally realized that her ideals, her expectations, her idea of family honor, none of it mattered anymore. It was all shattered. And for me, that moment was worth everything. I had finally become the man I was supposed to be. Not the man they wanted me to be, but the one I had fought to become. And in that freedom, I knew I had taken back my life.